Hello everyone, this video will cover Module 12. Module 12 is the first module that will deal with our last genre for the semester, which is playwriting or drama. So in this module, we're going to get an introduction to how to write a play, and you'll also create a plan for a play that you'll be writing, and we'll get you started on all of that. So the drama modules are going to be different from the poetry and short fiction modules because first of all, you're only writing one piece. And the reason is because to write even an effective play, it's going to be pretty long. And so you're going to have to work pretty hard at just getting the whole story out. It's much more difficult for most students than any kind of short story or poem. And so we're working with a very different genre of writing. And for a lot of students who take this class, this is the very first time they've ever had to write a play. And so it can be pretty challenging for them. So what you'll be doing in this module, like I said, is learning more about being a playwright, what should be included in plays, and how that ties to what we've learned already. So you'll notice there's a lot in common with short stories. That is, we'll have characters and a plot. There is a clear plot arc, a line of ideas for the events that happen in the play. And then obviously beginning and middle and conclusion. The thing that's different though is that you don't have any story that you're writing. The entire story has to be carried in dialogue. And that can be particularly challenging for students who tend to want to describe everything like in the stage directions or something because they're so used to writing stories. So your dialogue is what has to carry the entire story. The other thing is thinking about it almost like a poem. The format is set up where you're just getting lines of dialogue, and that's pretty much it. We might have a few stage directions, we might have a few descriptions of the setting, but for the most part, it's entirely dialogue. The other issue is that with a play, as you're writing it, you have to imagine how it's going to be performed. However, as a playwright, you don't have any control out of how it's going to be performed. Theoretically, if this were to be taken and put on a stage, the director and the actors would have a lot more control over how it's going to look. So while you might have this picture in your head of how it might look on stage, it's not necessarily going to translate that way. So don't worry too much about what specifically it's going to look like, but you have to keep in mind that it has to be performed on a stage. And so you can't have a flood or something like that because there's no way that you can put water all over the stage. So you have to be thinking about elements of if time passes in your play, how are you going to show time passing? You can't just say time passes because the audience sitting in the seat is not going to see that. They're watching a play, they're not watching a movie, we're not reading a book. And so it's a completely different way of thinking about how you can possibly create a story. And so that will be a little bit of a challenge for a lot of you. So this module has the last quiz over writing the play. And so you'll read the chapter and then take the quiz. And then you want to get into the assignment itself. Since we're just writing the one play, you have the assignment here, and then the first thing you're going to do is create a plan. And the main reason is just so that I can look at your plan and kind of see what you're thinking about and if there are going to be any issues with it. And so your play should be about 10 minutes long, which is actually a lot of dialogue if you actually time it out. And so we're looking at probably at least 5 pages for your play, if not longer. So when you think about, you can actually read your dialogue aloud too and kind of time it a little bit to see how it works. But you might be thinking about different ways to create a play. The play itself, the subject of the play can be anything, but it does need to be something that can be performed with multiple characters. You have to have at least 2 characters, and you want one of them to be at least a round character. that we can kind of attach to as an audience and see their change throughout the story. The plot needs to be believable, obviously one that can be performed on a stage. You'll have a short list of characters and a description of the setting before the play, and then the rest of the wording will be dialogue, with the exception of any kind of stage directions or dialogue directions. So these would be in italics, kind of in parentheses, that look like this, where we get just a real short description of any action that has to take place. Now you want to obviously use these fairly sparingly, because the actors and the directors are going to come up with a lot of the action in the play, but you do want anything that is essential for the story to be put in those stage directions in the parentheses. So you can see the formatting in the textbook as well. There's quite a few good examples in there. So that's kind of the idea behind it. You can use really any topic, but keep in mind that for it to be a play, there needs to be, it's like a short story, you have to have a central conflict that we see immediately. Even more so than a short story, because you don't have any backstory or description. We have 2 characters on a stage, or 3 characters on a stage. Something has to happen immediately, otherwise your audience will fall asleep. So if you have never seen a play before, just go to a stage. I highly recommend seeing a play in person. But you can definitely look at versions on YouTube if you want to. Just, sitting in the audience, curtain comes up, something has to happen, or you're going to lose your audience immediately. So things happen a little bit more suddenly than in a short story, and there's not a lot of build up to, we got to get these characters doing something right now, otherwise we've lost our audience. So just going to keep that in mind. There's a lot to writing plays. I've got a really good example right here called The Dictionary Salesman, and it's a 1-act play, and it's a 10-minute long one, and you can see how much dialogue is in there for a full 10-minute play. This is effective play formula. We've got a little bit at the beginning with the exposition. Typically, there's no like voiceover narrator. We want the 2 characters to kind of introduce the concept without introducing it obviously. So we don't want a character to say, "Hey Bob, I'm your brother," we should be able to see that with their interactions. But it's very difficult to set up. You want one simple conflict, especially in a short 10-minute play. There should just be kind of one thing that they're dealing with. An inciting incident that gets us started, the rising action that raises our interest in the play, what's going to happen, and the climactic moment, and then the resolution where everything kind of comes together at the end. So you see it kind of follows the same parts as a short story, but we typically have a steeper upline. There's much more tension involved right away that leads to a more dramatic climax, just because people are watching it in person. And then this is the plan that you have. So basically you're just thinking through your plan. You're going to write out all of your ideas and then submit that. And obviously I will give you feedback on it much faster than I've been giving you feedback on some of your other assignments. And then take your self-assessment quiz for this one. And so all the modules will be open for the drama units, like I've done before, but this one you'll need to start with. You need to do that plan first, otherwise I have nothing to look at. So I'll need to be able to help you. And of course, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to email me. I hope you have a great week.